So in this video, we're going to be doing an overview slash review of The Walking Dead show. Today is November 20th, 2022, and it is officially the last episode of The Walking Dead, the original Walking Dead show. I know this is Movie Mania. We usually cover movies, but we decided to cover this show because it's a pretty big show, and we've been watching it our whole lives as long as it's been around. And there's a lot of stuff we want to go over. We want to go over generally the entire show. Generally speaking about the seasons, but joined by Barry, my dad, today for this review. And what are your, I guess not overall thoughts, but like just what do you have to say about The Walking Dead as a whole now that it has ended?
Well, as a whole, I mean, this has been, obviously a really great show to me, and I know to my son Kenny here as well. Other family members have watched this throughout the years at different times, but me and Kenny have been with this since the beginning. Since it started, it was something we saw that was coming out that we definitely thought we would like, and then it drew us in immediately as far as, I think, the first catch was, the zombies and all the different things going on, and then you caught into all the characters with a couple behind us here that were our favorites. And it was a great show. It was something I look forward to every week. In my lifetime, I've had quite a few different shows, and now there's a lot of different shows that come out on TVs as far as the different apps you can get and things like that we enjoyed. But we have stuck with this since the beginning. Obviously, through COVID, you had a little bit of a slowdown there, but it's just been a great show. And overall, I've really enjoyed watching it, and I've looked forward to it, like I said, every week to watch.
Yeah, this show has been around for a while. When this show came out on October 31st, 2010, I was 11 years old, which is just insane. The fact that the show's been around this long, it's been one of the only shows I've watched. I mean, what is going on here? Really?
She's fine.
Our cat is right behind the camera. Obviously, as you can tell, you've seen Rick and in the background of a lot of movie reviews. He's been back there for a while, the movie review room. But this show, I haven't really been able to, I'm not able to watch or consistently watch many shows, but this has been one that I have, and I've been watching for so long. And the funny story about this show is the first episode you watched, and my dad watched it, and he saw the first episode, and he told me it was a good show and I should watch it. So then I watched the next episode again. You watched it for the second time, and then we watched it ever since then. We watched different episodes all around the country, it seems like. And then there's been maybe a couple we've missed. There's been a couple that happened during Kentucky games. This one actually happened during a Kentucky game, which is kind of insane, the last one.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of ups and downs in the show. Obviously, there's favorite characters. There's so many different characters. And overall, I think this show, I think the main takeaway is it was usually slammed and or praised for how many characters it killed off to where you can never really tell who's going to survive. Anyone could die in the show. That's at least how they portrayed it. There were only a couple characters that you felt were pretty safe.
No, I just, obviously there's a lot to take in here. With Kenny saying 2010, I mean, that it is, quite a lot of time that's gone by. And I do remember now, because after watching the final episode tonight, you're taking in a lot. It is neat to know they're going to do spinoffs that are going to probably answer some more questions that didn't get answered tonight. So I thought the finale was fine. I wouldn't say it was great by any means. I think the show has been great. But I do think these spinoffs is going to hopefully help with a lot of things that I think we'll enjoy. But since 2010, I do remember watching the show, and I was a little skeptical of the gore. I really love the storylines. I loved, the basis of it, and I knew Kenny would like that as well. And so I was skeptical of the gore because of his age, but it was something we have obviously dealt with, and I think it's hopefully worked out pretty well. But again, like I said before, this show ranks easily in the top 5, if not the top 3 for me in my lifetime. Just one I can think of, The Sopranos was one I caught on to that I really loved. Other than that, there's a few that are filling that void now, but this show is iconic to me. And it was something I think that, when it started, I don't know that they realized how big it was going to get. But it was pretty impressive. And again, it was, just a great show.
Yeah, I do think it is important to say I totally skipped over that. The season finale was okay. The overall this last season was just fine, I think. There was interesting things. They went some different routes with, the Commonwealth and this kind of higher power. It seemed like it was a lot more organized of an area. And this show's been through a lot of phases of almost having civilization back and it gets destroyed and it happens once again. But I do think this show went from the first season being insane and just really scary as a kid, not knowing who would survive because you don't know any of the characters, to the season 2 being kind of slow, but then ending in a crazy way. And then, in my opinion, season 3 was the height of the show, was the craziest point, and had some of the best episodes. And even though I actually have to correct that because I originally said season 3 was the craziest, but actually season 4, the mid-season finale, is my all-time favorite episode in the height of the show. It's the prison, the governor storyline. That was the height of the show, in my opinion. Then it went up and down. Negan sent it back up with it made it really crazy with that character. And then it kind of was just okay for the rest of the show. And I don't think it reached that level again. But it was nonetheless really crazy.
Yeah, and again, because we're now elaborating on the show itself a little bit. When it first started, I think just the basis of what it was about is what caught us. And then, character-wise, like I said, I think there was a lot of great characters. I thought the unpredictable nature of what they did with characters getting knocked off really was something that drew me in. But I do admit that there were certain characters I did not want to see go. So as a fan, you got a couple behind us right here. So when Rick, was taken out, I was glad to know that he was not necessarily dead. But, it was sad to see him go off the show because I thought he was a staple of what the show was all about. And the different twists of the different evil characters and watching that world unfold, it made you feel better about your own here. But it just, it had a lot of different great things. And like Kenny said, there were some things this is why all shows run their course. I think this is a show, the way they're doing it is the best way to have it continue. This made one of the longest runs I can think of any show. Game of Thrones was another one that I loved, and I think that made 9 seasons, and everybody, I think, was upset at how that ended too fast. So I think this show, ran its course pretty well, and I think with these spinoffs, like I said, this is something that maybe we'll be talking about here in the near future, because there's a couple already that I do want to watch.
Yeah, I do think the aspect about this show that kind of went over the top at points is the gore, and it's something that I think it was kind of necessary for this show. They went over the top in certain points that it's just kind of like they're almost just like showing off, like, oh, look at our special effects. But there are certain points that certain zombie movies kind of brush over the fact what a zombie is. And in this show, the way they depict zombies, they actually eat you, made that so terrifying as a kid. Like, getting eaten by a zombie is like the worst way to go. And that's why in this show, that's how terrifying it was. It really summed up how terrible it'd be to be in this world. That if you get caught by a zombie, you're not just getting bit on the arm and then they run away. Like, that's a terrible way to go. And it really made it terrifying as a kid. I had nightmares about this show. But then it also made it really suspenseful because you did not want your characters to go that way.
Yeah. We're watching The Talking Dead as we speak. I know we're going to continue on from this, but
I guess, do you want to say like a favorite character? Or
but if I had to give a favorite character of this whole show, and again, there were a lot of good people in this show, I am going to go with Rick. Daryl, a close second, and he kind of took over that a little bit as Rick was gone. But there were several other characters that I really enjoyed. There were some that I loved to hate, which honestly makes a good show because you want to see these people be dealt with and things like that. But this show was amazing with how many characters it had. Some of the other shows I'm talking about, now Game of Thrones did this as well, very unpredictable on who was going to go and things like that. But a lot of shows you fall in love with over the years, the characters kind of stick through the show. So I think the show itself obviously navigated that pretty well, but there were staples, and I think Rick was one of them was hard. He couldn't be replaced. Yeah.
Well, I agree. Rick has overall carried the show for sure. He's just like this character that you gotta love, and he's a leader. and he does so much throughout the show that it really does revolve around him for the most part. And but Daryl, my personal favorite character is Daryl. Ever since that second episode where he came with the crossbow, just an amazing character. Then he obviously became a fan favorite with the famous quotes, "If Daryl dies, we riot." Kind of the no one wanted him to die, and that's kind of the point where the show got to the point where he basically was so safe that I wasn't even afraid of him in the show, which I think hurt it because I was like, "There's no way he's gonna die." Versus the first season, I really didn't know. Like he could have easily died because no one was even had time to pick him as their favorite. Quick.
And I will say too, just to piggyback on that, his favorite character, who I love too, like I said, was a close second. Daryl. Maybe these shows actually see how the show evolves, and then they see the fan interest and things like Kenny said. I think maybe if they would have killed Daryl off, I don't know that this show may have taken a more of a nosedive.
I agree. I think that's what they thought.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that's what they were worried about with Rick, because he really carried the show in that aspect.
Yeah.
I think that Michonne leaving was another big aspect too, because she's basically my number 3 character. I'd say my favorite character is Daryl, then Rick, then Michonne.
Yeah.
Those were the top 3 to me. But I do think. What do you think?
No, Michonne's 3 for me as well.
Yeah, I do think so. Season 1 was the first season that I thought was insane because you see like Rick come out of the hospital and you see everything just messed up. The city with all the zombies is insane. Speaking, season 1 has Shane, Lori, and Rick, and kind of like Shane and Lori are together. Rick comes back, and then that whole situation starts. And then that's kind of the. What are your thoughts about
Season 1?
Season 1, yeah.
Yeah, season 1 I thought was great because at that time we had no idea what was really going on. We knew the world had fallen apart. We did not know what the zombies would be able to do or what was taking place there. So I thought that I just knew the show gripped you from the start of what was coming next. And like Kenny had said, the unpredictable nature of what could evolve from each show. But for me, watching that go through season 1 was just, it was all gripping. It was all developing the characters, what was going on, and obviously set us in place to where we're here tonight after watching it for 12 years.
But it was kind of tough on that first episode, though, because a horse dies in the first episode. And as a kid, even as an adult, I don't like watching that, but as a kid, that was pretty disturbing to see a horse die.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
I definitely don't care to watch animals die. Obviously people as well. You love to hate certain characters that don't go, but
rough.
Yeah, it was different. So.
But then season 2 is kind of the farm, which is a lot slower, and there's a lot of jokes about this show, how season 2 is just like crickets because nothing happens. But stuff happens, but it's for sure slow because you're on a farm that's like a secluded area versus the city, and they have this kind of safe haven there. But then it ends mainly with Rick killing Shane because that's like a big story arc.
Yeah.
You got anything about season 2?
Season 2 was good. I don't remember a season really going off course. I thought it kept building. Like I said, that first grip of what was going on, and like Kenny, I think it said, the zombie thing it was always around, but those first few seasons, that was kind of the main enemy and was the thing to be most scared of. And then it just kept developing into other people or bad people or things like that were starting to come out in this new world. And so the second season, I enjoyed that as well. We lost some good people again in that season that we liked in the show, but it definitely just kept defining, certain characters, as far as what you knew about them. And obviously certain things were dealt with that, had to be dealt with.
And then season 3 is the prison, because season 2 ends with the farm, and the Rick Shane scene where Rick kills Shane is still, in my opinion, one of the best episodes, because that's just a crazy scene. It's so well done, because it's a really hard thing Rick has to do to kill Shane. But season 3 is the prison, which I was in middle school at this time, because I remember doing like edits on the computer of like different images from this season. But season 3 and 4 were actually the prison. And I thought, like I said, season 4, the mid-season finale, where Rick and the governor fight, Michonne kills the governor, was still the best episodes where Herschel dies. But what are your thoughts about season 3 and 4?
Definitely. Season 3 and 4 picked back up, like Kenny had said. I enjoyed it all. But I do think this show, for sure, you had to have a common enemy. I know there was always things going on. There was enough things to get over in life with what was going on at that time. But you had to have an enemy, and they definitely found some good ones that
governor.
again, yeah, the governor you love to hate. I think Merle, to a point, kind of became that a little bit early on. Besides other bad characters, sometimes in this stuff it makes you either get the best out of somebody or it turns the the worst out of somebody. And the governor, I admit, me watching the show, I enjoyed it, but I actually looked forward to the show when they were able to put him down.
Yeah,
So,
he is up there for one of the most annoying villains in the history of movie show. The Hell on Wheels villain might top this guy, but the governor, he's obviously not a murderer in real life. He's a really good actor, but I could not stand this guy, and he was so annoying. That's why when he died, it was so gratifying. But the thing is, he's got to be up there with one of the most annoying villains. But then season 5 was the Terminus season, which was really just a Terminus episode because the whole Terminus cannibal thing ends in an episode. They blow up that place in one episode. And so that was that was a big surprise. You expected it to be a whole season, but they blew up Terminus in one episode. So that's basically it for that one. And then season 6 is the Negan, which I hope it's actually, I think the end of season 6 is when he introduced Negan. Season 7 is when he actually kills Glenn and Abraham in that first episode. What do you have to say about that?
yeah, and basically what Kenny was saying, I mean, it's just, again, you look forward to watching certain characters be dealt with that were kind of, again, the characters that you were following and cared about in this show. You hated to see what I thought were good people being taken advantage of, especially in the toughest of times. I mean, that's when you see true character come out, and you wanted to see these bad people dealt with, and you knew that there was, like our world here, there's always good and bad, but the things they had to deal with the different groups, was something tough to get over, and was glad to see them, get through that. What was the next one now?
Well, so it was Negan with the one episode where he kills Glenn and Abraham, which we just watched the last episode where they kind of they dealt with it pretty good because Maggie doesn't get over it. But in my opinion, what Negan did to Glenn is unredeemable. He cannot come back from that. At least not in the eyes of Maggie. That was an absolutely disturbing, brutal scene. That was just, for Glenn fans, it was even more disturbing. But it was a very, very messed up scene. And I don't think Negan could come back from that. I've had arguments with Jake on the channel about whether he can. He thinks he can. But I definitely don't think so. Do you have any other comments about that?
No, absolutely. I agree. I think that the show had some tough losses and some things go on up to that point. But that one there was definitely a show that, was top of the bar as far as, something that shocked us. I think the build up to that was you knew somebody was going down, so it was and ended up being 2, which them killing Glenn, one of the nicest characters we had in the show, was definitely a little shocking. And then I think Abraham,
he was first,
was the other one that went in that show, and I got to be honest, that was one of my favorite characters as well. And sadly, and I don't, there was a few characters you don't want anybody to get the bat. But there was those 2 I would not have picked for sure. And I thought it was a great episode, though, as far as keeping you on the edge of what was going to happen.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest twists in a movie, or in a show or a movie ever. Especially because we had to wait a whole year. You see the mystery of who gets killed, and then you find out a year later. Yeah. But then the next season, I think the next seasons kind of blend together, but Negan's kind of there for a couple seasons. There's some things between them. And then Rick eventually leaves, and that's when the Alpha character comes into it. Kind of the Whisperers, and then it kind of blends together with the last one. Because to be honest, the last seasons were okay, but they were never reached that level again, like I said. Because I thought the Whisperers was a cool storyline with the fact that they hid with the zombies. And then we get to the last season where the zombies start to evolve, which I thought, to be completely honest, was a little forced. Because they didn't really explain it. I thought they should have done that earlier. So the fact that you see some in the first episode carrying rocks, but it seems like they really started evolving fast in these last few episodes. To carry rocks, to climb walls. I thought that was a little fast, and I needed some explanation with that.
Yeah, and then before I talk about that aspect of it, I do want to go back on, another bad character being Negan, and it was Alpha. Was that the woman?
Yeah.
Okay.
Alpha's a woman. Yeah.
Yeah, they were bad characters. Negan was one that was a little different. I think what Kenny was talking about there before. Obviously, I didn't care for his character, how he acted, especially towards the good characters we liked on this show. But what that evolved into, because they really took out every other bad person in this show, including Alpha. But Negan is the one, if I'm right, that made it through.
Yeah.
And just in my opinion, no, I don't think for Maggie, like I enjoyed watching the end of that. I think it would be hard to find a place to forgive someone like that, which, you know, you would want to try to do, but you'd never forget it. You couldn't. And so I thought the show actually handled that pretty well and ended right. But talking about the zombies themselves, the evolution of the zombies, maybe the show can elaborate on that more. And I don't know where this is going to go. I think that's another question that may get answered more, like some other things with Rick and things like that, that maybe they'll find out what created this. Maybe they are evolving into something new in these shows. Because when the show started, I thought I remembered, and I have to go back and watch it again, that they were actually faster during the day, if that's right. Or they were faster at night. More active at night. And they did do more. If you go back and watch some of those episodes, they were definitely a little more attacking. Not that they weren't at all times, you know, with certain scenes, but where they started going with the show, with them picking up rocks, climbing walls, I saw one pick up a knife, I think.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of questions, you know, still out there to be answered. Maybe Talking Dead's going over that a little bit. But I do think hopefully here with the spinoffs that we'll get more answers with that.
In the first season, you do see one climb a fence and you see one hold a rock. So it's not like it was completely out of nowhere. But I do think they really need to explain that. I don't know. We kind of reviewed everything. I know a lot of people do reactions to these. We've never done reactions. We've watched this show ever since 2010, and it's been one of the only shows that we've watched consistently for that long. And it only comes out at certain times. It's not like you can watch everyone at the same time. This show is for sure one of my favorite shows. I don't watch that many, but for how much I still have so many memories of this show, like in middle school, and then obviously being terrified as a kid. And then I do think it needed to end, because I think the show, I don't know, it couldn't really, there wasn't many other directions for it to go, but now Rick is actually on screen talking, so do you have anything else to say about it?
No, I agree. Again, going back to when we started this, it's been a great show for us to watch. I always enjoy doing things with my family, and you know, this was something that, again, I really enjoyed watching, love the storylines. Like Kenny said, sadly, I think things like this have to run their course, but I really am still taking in what they're doing with this, which if you think about it, when you have a great show, there are characters off those shows sometimes that spin off and have their own shows. So that's what you're watching evolve now. And only because there's only so much time in this life. We followed this show mainly for sure. The other ones, like I said, we tried to keep up with, didn't do as well. But I will be watching these spinoffs, I believe, of like Rick and whatever he does with that. Rick and Michonne, and then Daryl and Negan, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's just Daryl, but
if it's just Daryl, I'm going to try to follow those because it looks like they're taking off with those characters to where really the show's still continuing. It's just not going to be the overall big picture of The Walking Dead.
This show went through a lot of ups and downs, but I thought we would get this review in because this show has ended, and I've been watching this for literally half my life, so
yeah,
it's a pretty big deal. And I've never done any videos on this in general. We can talk about the show probably for hours, but this was our review / overview of The Walking Dead, seasons 1 through 12, and anything else to say?
No, that's it, man. I really, like I said, I enjoyed it, and look forward to the new shows.
Make sure you let us know down below if you've watched The Walking Dead, who your favorite character was, when you started, when you ended, or whether you watched it all the way through like us. Make sure you let us know down below, and we will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.